King's Indian, the white grip. Today we're gonna continue this series on understanding the King's Indian, and today we're gonna look at what happens when white manage to stop black's counterplay and get a grip and hold black tight and squeeze him to death. This is basically what you're afraid of with black. This is what you aim for with white in the King's Indian. If you want to understand the King's Indian, this is the game to watch today, and I'm sure you will get a better understanding of the King's Indian. It's a difficult opening to understand. The more examples you will see, the better you will learn, I'm sure. I hope. Anyway, let's get on with it. This is a long game. It's played in the Swedish league. Vitaly Sivuk versus Jung By the way, it's funny, his name is SEO. That's also search engine optimization. One of the things we are experts at here at KH Online, my online company. Anyway, we have good results, by the way. Vitaly Sivuk recently moved to Sweden due to the war in the Ukraine, and he's playing here with a rating of 24 or 32 or something, which makes no sense. I think he was close to 2600 for a long time, and is a strong player. So it's not fun to play against players who's clearly, absolutely, and utterly underrated. Anyway, this is the King's Indian. We have it again, and here we see it from white's perspective. So you have more space. Basically, we've talked about this a lot. You have this under control, and black's got up till here, and then we are all fighting over this one, right? But the thing is, it's not like a semi-close position. This is more like a dynamic slash close position. So a lot of things are a little bit different than if you have, for instance, position coming from the French or the Caro-Can and things like that. Black has less space and potentially some bad pieces and potentially some problems with freeing himself. On the other hand, his position is very dynamic. It has potential to do something. Now, this is known as the Semic variation. It is a good opening, I think, for white, but it's also a very committing opening. When you play f3, you weaken a lot of squares, dark squares like f3 and like e3 and d3, and you deprive this knight of its natural square on f3. So what do you get instead? Well, you get a very stable center with f3, and you get chances to play g4 or h4 and things like that in one go. And it makes it very difficult for black to attack the center, blowing it up. It's usually in the Semic, your center will not be blown up. The most common line for black here is to play something like this and go into a Benoni. The pawn sacrifice here is known as fine for black, and I think it's difficult to play for white, so it's probably not recommended. But black will get a lot of compensation if you take the pawn, and this is the main line. A lot of theory, and at the moment black seems to be fine. There's a lot of theory here, but if you're going to play the Semic variation, this is the line you have to like. Black, of course, have different options. You can also castle and play here. You can play with knight c6 is a line, and e5 is a line. In this game, he plays an interesting move, which I, by the way, also play in Blitz. So I think it's an interesting move. I like this idea for black that you are playing like this. So basically you're planning a flank attack here, and white has to decide what to do about it. He decides to stop it, a4, but that gives black the possibility to play a5 and getting this square under control. So suddenly black's got a foothold in white's camp, and there are some holes both here but also here, right? So this is and this one is not going to attack anything anytime soon. But on the other hand, white did prevent b5, bishop d3, and knight a6, and we see that it was an advantage for black to have the knight on on b8, and it can sit here, and white decides that he doesn't care about the bishops. And you could argue that you have to take it, but on the other hand, you could also argue that this bishop is not very good at the moment. It doesn't have much potential. Actually, it has the potential to become sort of a bad bishop. Instead, black decided to castle. Also, white probably don't want to bury this rook, so he had option and rook c1, but white is getting ready to bury the rook, and e5, all natural moves. We are fighting for the dark square with black. White is holding on and plays d5 here. Natural move. Knight d7, also very natural move. Black is having a lot of dark squares here, and also freeing for this move, and knight c5 and queen d2. And here, a little bit surprising maybe, black decides to take on d5. You could argue for something like bishop d7, but he's probably afraid it will take and he will lose something. In general, you should not really be afraid of that. I think bishop d7 looks very natural in this position for black. He took, and white took with the knight, clearing, but still this does not look bad for black. Bishop d7, attacking this pawn here, and white has to play this move, and black plays rook c8, having good pieces and getting ready to try to get some counterplay with f5. White plays b4, making the queen side more or less his territory, but also making sure that the king side is no longer really protected here. And I think this position is very equal. Please notice, if you take this one, of course, then in this situation it makes not much sense because this one is hanging. But even if you were to win this pawn, then it's probably not a good idea, because this guy here will become really, really strong on the black squares. It got a freeway all over the place to do all kind of damage on white. And in general, a bishop like that is really a monster. So be very afraid of that. A5, fixing b7 as a weakness. And this is an interesting position. Black decides to take. I think if white, for instance, were to play take with the f pawn, I think black played queen h4. He took with the bishop here. Now this position is of course interesting. One idea for black here is to play bishop f6. So why would you play bishop f6? Well, the idea is of course to play bishop d5, exchanging the black squared bishop. We can see that black has pawns on dark squares here, so it would be favorable for him to exchange the dark squared bishop, also because he would get serious counterplay on the dark squares, and this is, well, in general, this is dangerous for white. His king can often get into trouble. So even though if he wins a pawn or something like that, black will get serious counterplay with the dark squared bishop. Something to be very afraid of in this kind of position. So bishop f6, I think it's a very unclear position. Black does have a weakness here. And a little less space, but he also has some active possibilities, and you could even imagine something like this, and white retreats, and you go here, and black go back, and so on. White go back, and we will have a repetition of moves. I think the position is more or less balanced after. Bishop f5 is is the idea is to keep, but you might end up with this one and being passive, and that's a bit dangerous here. And white would like to get the bishop pair, because then he probably has some chances in here. And again, this is interesting, and white takes with the queen this time, keeping sort of this one down here. Nothing happens in the f file. This one is weak. Still, the position is not it's not like really bad for black. It's just is starting to look something where you have to be a little bit careful, because white's got some ideas. Rook here, white is putting pressure on this pawn. Please notice something like this is a typical trick. The queen is covering the b rook here, so don't fall for that. Rook f7, natural move, and you can say that white is probably slightly but clearly better here. Rook and black, of course, if black could exchange these two, he would probably be fine. It would be nice to get that exchange, and white plays a little bit of and I think here black should try this move for sure. This is also what he did. Bishop b6 and queen d7, and still we have an interesting position. If white, and this is the kind of thing where black has to be really careful that white does not get a grip. If white gets a grip, black is in trouble. If white does not get a grip, then we have an unclear position, and black even have some potential. Sometimes the e pawn can move, and the dynamics, which I hope you saw the other game about the King's Indian, where we had some serious dynamics by black, and the dynamics can get into play. Rook here, black meanwhile has to be careful not to lose this pawn, because then the a pawn will be very dangerous, and also this pawn is of course very necessary. If you lose that one, you are in trouble. Queen f5, and black says okay, let's get and white decides okay, we can do that, and I think this position is still more or less equal, but black is starting to look a little bit. He has to be pretty careful now. This is not is something where you cannot just say okay, but there's not much material, and I have attack and you have attack and so on. You have to look out for yourself here, and you have to play actively. You have to be sort of interesting. This pawn is weak, and of course you can cover it, and most of all you would like to get that one. But the problem is the bishop can cover that one, but this bishop cannot cover that one, so the rook have to do it. And still natural play by both parts. White is keeping a slight edge, and this is kind of the things you don't really want with black in the King's Indian. You don't really want these kind of situations where you have to be careful that you have enough counterplay all the time, but you're not really playing for an attack. You're just playing to sort of keep white in check and not being pushed back. And this kind of move is not really what you like. And here white's king is able to cross. Black's king is also able to cross, but we see that white's space begins to count for a lot more. And already you could say that even though they're not playing precise chess here, and I think you should take that one, because one rook would make it easier to do something. He decided not to, and they move around a little bit, and that's another problem with when you're in black's position here, is that it's white that decides when something happens. You can't just force it in any way. And again, he didn't want to exchange, and again they're trying to just moving around a little bit. And now he decides to check, and this is the kind of thing that when you're black and you have to be worried all the time that maybe sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but you have to be worried about it all the time, and white can decide when or if the exchange is going to happen. And here he decides it was time. The king can get into the play. The rook is a little bit passive. Still there is pressure on this one, but by the way, I think white could win here immediately with this move. But that's the kind of move that's pretty difficult to see. But it's winning more or less by force. This kind of, and this is the problem for black, is that after this he will lose a pawn. And of course that's winning for white. So rook c5, he didn't see that, but that would. And by the way, it's natural that he does not see it, because it's not a natural thing. Of course, the computer see it like that, but humans don't see it because it's not sort of the logical follow-up to what had happened previously in the game. Bishop back, and they move around a little bit here, and white has to find a way to sort of the thing is he would really like to get the king to b5. It's not so easy, and here he decides, okay, I have to allow this. If he could get the king to this square, he would like it, but it's not at the moment not possible. Black will just keep on having pressure on a5. So and you have to get the king from somewhere where it can both cover a5 and get to b5 without having problem with the pin. So he decides, okay. But this is still pretty nice for white. The king is active, and this is what you're of course afraid of. King coming in. King c6 is a very nice move. The idea is simply that after something like this, we will, and white is threatening king b5, and all pawn endings will end up in black being in zugzwang and lose this pawn. And you should check this out for yourself. This is the kind of things that you should know, because it's good. And also, of course, you also threaten this move, by the way. So instead, white goes for the bishop, and it goes here, and isn't that instructive that white will like to exchange his bad bishop, his good bishop, for black's bad bishop, and black cannot do that because white has so much more space, and that black pawns will fall, and white will get a dangerous pass pawn. So he has to keep the bad bishop to be able to defend the pawns. But it's still a problem. And white, I like the way white plays here, just trying to dominate black. And here is again, we know this pawn is not going anywhere soon, so we're gonna get it. This was a huge mistake. Here white could play rook f4, and of course this kind of rook ending is very nasty. It might be drawn, but it's very difficult for humans to draw this. This pawn is way more dangerous than this pawn because of the active king. An active king is almost always good in rook endings. So be aware of that. Where you control here, black played this move, and white has a winning move here. By the way, this is a fine continuation of the domination strategy we talked a little bit about earlier. So g3, nice little move, taking away this square for this rook. So white will be able to play this rook check, and this one will drop. And well, it's kind of nice, isn't it? and this of course is now totally winning. A very nice, and the d pawn is queening, and of course the rook and bishop can easily stop these 2 pawns. That's not even a problem, because the king is not coming. The king is not coming at all. So that was a nice game by Sivuk, and very instructive, and it shows how to kill the King's Indian. Well, you get this grip, you keep onto it, and you sort of massage black and avoid the counterplay, and then you get forward and you use your space advantage to win the endgame after you achieve some sort of domination. So this is the key to understanding the King's Indian. Don't get into this mess as black. Of course, all King's Indian player will try it at some point. And if you're white, this is the kind of thing you usually aim for, controlling the game and controlling black. This was DM Talks. If you have not already signed up for the email, remember to do it. If you have not liked, come on. And if you're not subscribed, well, what are you even doing here? This was DM Talks. Thank you.